You might have somebody like me that just goes to the CBD scale, and those three are irrelevant to me. So make sure that these hit the points for the people that aren't buying
Right.
what
Yeah.
I'm buying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah. I
So
like
what's
that.
next in products for both of you, or what's the coolest new innovation in it?
I
Well, like you made a point, like how you like edibles and drinks. Like
yeah.
I think, at first, even me, I thought, who in the right mind is buying like a 2 milligram, 2.5 milligram drink? But you know, or if you look at edibles, I
This
still
guy.
think, yeah, I still think edibles, like the dosaging on the legal market is ridiculous. Like 10 milligrams, actually, you know, the for most legal edibles users, 10 to 20 is going to suffice, is going to be sufficient for 80% of the market really. But there's such a mass amount on the legacy side that will refuse to come into the store because they need like 50 milligrams, and you know everyone's starting to get it that running a legal business costs money, right? So the cost is going to be higher for people. But if we expect to bring people in, you know, we're trusted to go buy a Texas Mickey at the LCBO and not drink the whole thing in one sitting, right? A serving of alcohol is, an ounce, right?
Yeah.
Say it's hard liquor. Why can't we have packaging that has, say, up to 100 milligrams of THC in it, but it's clearly labeled that a serving size is 10 milligrams, and clearly educate the consumer that, you know, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams is usually enough, and then go from there. Don't eat the whole chocolate bar in one sitting. So that's one thing I want to see happening. But what really amazes me are the drinks. I think they're incredible because they typically use this what's called nanoemulsification. It's this technology that allows it to absorb in like 20 minutes. It has greater bioavailability, meaning more of it gets absorbed and used in your body. So you can have one drink in relatively short period of time, 20 minutes versus like an hour and a half for a chocolate if I need to have more. And then you have a little bit more. Just sort of like a beer. Like you don't
Yeah.
typically drink one
I'm,
beer.
I'm high on the drink. Well,
Yeah,
high on the drinks.
yeah.
Maybe
Got
wrong way to
it.
say that, but I love the drinks. I picked up 4 yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are probably like we said before. We had to walk to find this place.
Mhm.
Like we said before, like the transition from a non can or the can of curious
Mm-hmm.
to beverages, I think is
Mm-hmm.
probably the big one. Where
Mm-hmm.
do you guys sit on the well, we didn't go. Which ones are you high on?
Which ones am I high on? I beverages and edibles.
Yeah,
I like the format because they're both approachable.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when
That was
I
the
start
word.
to
That's
think,
the word I was trying to think
yeah,
of. You
and
said approachable.
yeah, so when I start to think of like where are we going in the industry, there are regulation and compliance changes that I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
are down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, how do we address
Yeah,
kind of what is happening?
yeah,
And as a retailer, I'm like, this is a really interesting way to build a long term relationship with
yeah.
a client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I sit around with my girlfriends and we will have like a bowl of edibles and
Mm-hmm.
some wine, and
Nice.
that mix of products and understanding what your customer is doing
Mm-hmm.
while they're consuming the product is
Right.
an
Yeah.
interesting way to start to think about how you might sell those formats to your
Totally,
customers.
Gotcha.
totally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was thinking of that very thing last night. I
Mm-hmm.
was having a Baker Street and ginger, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
it's really sweet,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's got a weed aftertaste. My
Mm-hmm.
wife does not like the weed aftertaste. I love it,
Okay.
but it's super sweet. So I wouldn't relate that to having a beer
Mm-hmm.
by any means, because you have two of those and you're gonna be all like shaky and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of like a pop thing. So then I'm thinking pop and chips,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that scenario, because that's what we were doing. We were watching scary movies, eating chips while we were drinking that. I just remembered we split it and I
Mm-hmm.
got banged up. It was awesome.
Well, a good example to like the regular like there's a lot of people who are moving. It's no secret. A lot of people are moving away from alcohol into cannabis
Yeah.
because of the health aspects. But you look at Molo, for example, this drink by Trust.
That's what
Yeah,
when I put that out yesterday. Somebody recommended that I try Molo as the crispy beer beverage.
it tastes exactly like a beer, like a
Really?
light beer. I'm not a big fan of beer, but many people are,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people that wouldn't transition away from beer, for example, because they don't want the soda taste. They don't want
Yeah.
the sugary drink.
Yeah.
But now you can drink something that's light, and the introduction of a balance with CBD and THC, so
Yeah.
you're not absolutely ripped if you have one. There's
Yeah.
like a nice mellow, calm balance from the CBD that makes it more enjoyable and peaceful, and instead of just being strictly high off THC.
Like not every
Mm-hmm.
beverage
Mm-hmm.
it serves the same purpose,
Yeah,
Yeah,
right? Like
right.
you
for
have an
sure.
iced tea at
And
one point,
I
and you
think
maybe have a water at another,
I
and
think the
there's all of those.
cannabis community always wants to relate it to one thing directly, right? Not make it a multifaceted approach. So relate it to a consumable intoxicant like alcohol. Like we gotta diversify that entire aspect to be all of the consumer needs across that, especially for a beverage and an edible, and even the effects.
The depth of where this product can go are so extensive.
Yeah.
And so if we limit our view to only like alcohol
Yeah.
or only coffee,
Yeah.
then we are missing the
Coffee's another one I
opportunities,
hear often. Yeah.
right? And
I
you
I
don't
always think.
have a coffee at all times of the day.
Yeah.
You have very specific practices around
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
coffee. You don't have a beer at all
There's
times of the day.
ritualistic in nature.
And
Yeah.
so like where do those rituals start to come up?
I've made, from retail, or maybe you can help me with this. My dream, you mentioned Wasaga. My dream is to have an only beverages SKU place
Okay.
in
That'd be
Wasaga,
cool, yeah.
like just
Okay.
a little shop. That was what I want. You obviously the SKUs need to diversify. You need to have a lot more selection.
Right.
But I think of it like a beer store
I like
on
that,
a beach
yeah.
somewhere. Do it
Yeah.
in Sauble, do it in Grand Bend, do it in Wasaga, something like that,
Right.
where it's just
Somebody do this.
some
Yeah.
consumable beverages. I'm cutting this part out.
No, I am
Brilliant
totally
idea.
on the same page as you. I've actually been kind of pushing on a couple different parties and thinking about
Yeah.
doing only edibles. And there is a store, I think,
Yeah.
based off of the RSA list,
Yeah.
that will be doing just edibles.
Oh.
But like, if you go to a really great bakery and they sell out a product at the end of the day, they
Yeah.
just sell out.
Yeah,
And,
they-
then
and
you,
then
like,
they shut
think
the
of it-
door.
And they shut the door.
Yeah.
And like, you
That
need
is such a great idea,
you-
especially for seasonal, even in a seasonal community.
yeah, like you can be very specific with your product.
Yeah.
Short menu, get it out the door.
And that's how restaurants do it, right? So like there's this amalgamation of kind of a restaurant and a retail vibe. It's got to be retail space, but
Right.
in terms of what your menu and you're producing or serving, it's going to be more restaurant vibe, bar and vibe. I think a salon too, because you're going back if there's a bud tender selection or a person that you trust to go back to,
Right, yeah.
then that to me is not. It's kind of like a bartender, but it could also be like a salon.
Is it like clienteling?
Yeah.
Is it like buying a suit?
Not that I go to a
I
salon.
like that, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I think whether it's right or wrong, I sort of take pride in serving all different groups of the community, like or all different interest levels. Like so we have stuff on the top shelf, we have stuff on the value brand, so there's everything for somebody. But I think where this could go, and I really like that idea of certain brands of them selling only certain consumption
Yeah.
methods, for example, like a pre-roll store or a
think
drink
of
store.
think of the lack of competition
Yeah.
you would have in that. Like
Yeah,
yes, you're
yeah.
competing with the other places, but if you specialize, like you say, edibles or beverages, and you
Right.
know you have pretty much every SKU that's available in your province, then competition wise, you're gonna have the most of it. Nobody else is really doing that.
Right,
If you can
yeah.
get in a community where it makes sense, like I think of like the Blunt and Cherry, or even down on Queens Quay, down there, like everybody that's going to the island, if the world ever opens again, that could be a thing.
Right, yeah.
And what you've done is you've actually, in thinking about that, you've answered whys. You've
Yeah.
answered what is the person doing before they're coming to me.
Yeah.
They're probably going somewhere outdoors. They need an easy format to consume this in the
Yeah.
way that you've like talked about this specific concept.
Yeah.
And what are the expectations going to be? It's not your neighborhood store in that
Yeah.
it's the reliable always there. If you go to the really small LCBO or the beer store in a small community, you don't expect them to have every single beer.
For sure.
You kind of go with what's going to make
For
you
sure. They're going to have
happy.
Bud Light or they're going to have Coors Light. They're going to have Bacardi or they're going to have Captain Morgan,
Yeah.
right? That's how you do it. I love those ones.
And-
Or you can go to Summer Hill and you can find anything under the sun.
Everything. Those are totally different formats,
Yeah.
totally different customer behaviors, and there's room for both in the market.
Yeah. Cool.
Excellent. So if you had to think of sort of your, yes, we've touched on it a bit, but your biggest beef in this industry and where you want to see it evolve, where you want to see it go, and maybe your place in it. Like where do you, what do you think about that? What do you have to say about that?
My biggest beef is that people are not asking why enough.
Okay.
And that exists in all avenues of the industry, specifically retail right now.
Okay.
Why are compliance and regulations the way that they are?
Okay.
Yeah.
If we know the whys, then maybe we can come up with more creative solutions to
Yeah.
them than what we've historically seen.
Gotcha.
Totally.
Going into a store and being like, why is this store doing it this way? And is it going to be applicable to my store
Yeah.
instead of just copying, pasting things that we've seen over and over and over again?
Yeah.
And then asking like,
Excuse me.
if and why something is in the store, what purpose does it have?
Mm.
Yeah.
Like everything should have a purpose. It shouldn't just be there because it's there. It's like, is it going to help our team members? Is it going to service our customers?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it going to highlight our brand story?
And
And that's
you're talking everything
everything.
from the decor, from the product marketing, from any of that stuff, plus your supply.
Everything. I'm like, what color is the floor? Is there
Yeah.
grout? Like
Mm.
all of those details. Is the lighting highlighting what products? What
Yeah.
type of shelf height do we have?
Mm.
Are we putting glass on glass? Like all of these things
Yeah.
become little subtle messages back
Right,
to your
right.
customer.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. We work with retailers to answer the
And
whys and how that translates with their
and
brands.
it's interesting. So, because I come from marketing and advertising, right? So I see a lot of things that need to be different. And even you just mentioning those things, because I'm not a retail person, the merchandising, the nuance there is incredible to me. Where now it seems like there's opportunity. Are you busy?
We're super busy.
Really?
Yeah.
Eh? That's good.
And I think one of the things that at the beginning it was like get the doors open,
Yeah.
and now we're collaborating a lot more with marketing teams
Yeah.
because it's like what's the message that goes externally, and then how do we make sure that
Yeah.
that comes to life physically in
Yeah.
the store?
Yeah.
And that's where we sit.